I think that if I had waited longer in my job, then I would have regrets. And I had it in my head that you need to have certain points met, and I didn't have all of those points that I thought I needed to have crossed off. And
this is the How to Quit Working Show. Jeff Steinman believes entrepreneurship is the only true path to freedom. That's why he created the How to Quit Working Show, where you'll hear stories, insights, and inspiration from lifestyle fanatics who left their soul-sucking 9-to-5 job forever. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and ultimate lifestyle fanatic, Jeff Steinman.
Hello and welcome to the How to Quit Working Show. Another amazing show today, as we always have every single day, because this is an amazing show with amazing guests who are doing amazing things, being listened to by some amazing people. I don't know, I must have watched WKRP in Cincinnati last night because I'm feeling like Dr. Johnny Fever for some reason today. I'm in a goofy mood. It's been a crazy, fun week, and I'm just getting over my cold finally, so I'm not going to sound like a giant snot bag on this episode or any future episodes, I hope. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. Today, we are going to be talking to Emily Christofferson. Now, the reason we're talking to Emily today is because she is a single mom who started a business. I like to get to all of the excuses that I hear about why I can't start a business, and I have kids is a huge one. So that's why whenever my guests have kids, we always talk about that. And how did you deal with the responsibility of raising children while you were starting your business, and the time challenges and all the things that come along with that. But I don't think I've ever talked to a single mom before who started a business, and that we are going to do today. Emily's got a great story. You're going to love it. Before we jump into that, let me remind you that we are having some amazing conversations over in the How to Quit Working Facebook group. You can get there by going to howtoquitworking.com/group and just click on Join Group, and I will approve your request very, very quickly. Like I said, we have great conversations over there. That is where the conversation after the show happens. Lots of really cool people just like yourself who are doing the same thing that you're doing. They're in the same situation. We also have other people out there who are farther along. We have folks out there who have quit their job already and are in the early stages of their business. We also have some seasoned entrepreneurs and business owners. And of course, Heather Osgood, the How to Quit Working coach, is out there, and she is always providing people with help and feedback and great information and perspective, and I'm out there as well. Let's not forget about that. I comment frequently. So join us over on Facebook, howtoquitworking.com/group. Now let's talk to Emily Christofferson. Emily, welcome to the show.
thank you so much, Jeff.
I am so glad to have you here. Now there's such a cool coincidence. We were just talking about it before the show started. You left your job in April of 2012, which is exactly when I left my job.
Yeah.
What a fun coincidence. But the really cool thing for our listeners is you're going to talk about financially how you made that transition. But let's start with, just tell us a little bit about what were you doing before and what made you decide to do something different.
Sure. So I'll go back to before I had my son. I have a 7-year-old, and before I had him, I was a regional business manager with a franchise company. I looked after 6 locations, and so I would travel around and I did lots of work, and I really loved it. There was lots of aspects of the job that I loved, but I decided at the end of my maternity leave that I didn't want to go back to that. I felt like I couldn't be there fully for my son, and also I didn't know how I would balance that lifestyle. So I was traveling a lot and I was working a lot. And so I made the decision to not go back, and I found a job with a local school board. Okay. So that's what I was doing before I left and became an entrepreneur.
Excellent. So why did you decide to leave the school board and do your own thing?
Well, the school board was the type of environment where you would stay in one position for many, many years. And so I didn't really see a future. And I tried really hard to make it work. So I had people around me who told me all of the reasons of why it was perfect for a mom. And it was pretty good pay, relative good pay. The hours were totally predictable. I could have summers off if I wanted. I was using my business background. and I left the job when I went home, and I could go on and on. But for me, I kind of felt like there was no creative outlet. So it was very structured. And although I enjoyed the work and I enjoyed the people that I work with, there wasn't anything to be creative about. There was no autonomy, and I struggled, and I did kind of crazy things like I would organize a soup swap or a salad day just to kind of do something extra and make it work for me. And I found that I couldn't make it work for me.
Interesting. Well, you could have just gotten another job, right? That let you be creative.
Yeah, that's true. But I always knew that there was more. And when I worked as the regional business manager, the franchisee was very laid back, and she was pulling away from the business. She had just become a mom herself, and she really gave me the freedom. And so I knew what that was like. And there was a spark there. And I wanted to recreate that, but in my own way.
So in your previous job, you got an opportunity to kind of get a little bit of a feel for the freedom and the creativity that you get to exercise as an entrepreneur.
Yes, without the financial risk.
Without the financial risk. Well, that's a great segue, Emily. Tell us about, now you are a single mom and you have a 7-year-old son, and I guess he was probably, about 4 or 5 when you made this transition. Mm-hmm. So tell us about financially, how did you make that work? Because it sounds so scary.
Well, going back to being a regional business manager, I was making really good money, and I knew that I wanted to stay home for a year for maternity leave. And here in Canada, we do have a year's maternity leave, and we get a portion of what we had made before. So I had already prepared for that, and I had money saved. And so I was doing really well before I had my son. And in that year, when I made the decision to work for the school board, although it was good pay in terms of what I was doing, it really wasn't comparable to what I had been doing. And so I looked at where I could cut back, and I was really careful with my money, and I was tracking it and looking really carefully at it. So I started just cutting back, and I started getting used to, whether I liked it or not, a lower financial bracket, because that was the decision that I had made. And so with my son, that was the reality. And I saved money during that year that I was off. And I also started to work with a smaller budget when I went back to work with the school board. So for me, it was almost like getting used to just living at a totally new pay rate. And when I started my business, I started it on the side while I was still working. And originally I thought, okay, I want to make, $1,000. That would be really great, to have every single month. And that was kind of my idea. So almost something that I could do that would fit in with being a mom and still working, and something I could do on the side without any pressure. So now, looking back, it's really that I got used to living at a pay rate that was a whole lot lower. And so I made it work with that. And so then when I started transitioning towards having a business, I had more money than I was making. And so that felt really great. And I wasn't as concerned about money because I'd had that practice of living at a having less money to live with.
Oh, now that's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, and it sounds like you kind of made a couple steps. Now, you started, what you said when you were on your maternity leave, you had some pay, but not the full pay that you received when you were actually there working. And then the school board, it sounds like that was kind of like another financial step down for you. So kind of forced you to contract a little bit, be a little bit more frugal, maybe eat some more meals at home, maybe shop at the less expensive stores. And that sort of thing. So you were sort of making these sacrifices, and then along comes, as you were building your business on the side and still working, then you were starting to make some extra money. So your income goes up a little bit, and you felt better about that, but you knew that you'd be okay living at that lower level. So it sounds like that. It sounds like really what was happening for you is you were kind of having this sort of changing of your habits and expectations and really beginning to get comfortable with the idea of not having as much money. So it made it probably less scary to think about living more frugally.
Right. And I really was making conscious decisions, and it was motivated from being a mom and that new love of my son and really realizing what is best and making decisions around that.
So how did you know when your business on the side was making enough money or had enough potential to make money that it was okay to leave your job?
Yeah, so at that point when I decided, I was at the point where I knew I couldn't take on any other clients. And I had looked at who I was working with and saw that the people who I was working with were not going to stop in the next month, 2 months, 3 months. So I knew that they would continue to work with me. So I knew that I had a baseline income there. So it wasn't really as much of a leap as I'm sure it would be for other people. And originally I thought, okay, I'll leave in September because the school year will start again in September, and that would make really good sense for me and for my position. But it really was just, there's so much work. If I get one more person, I'm not going to be able to take them on. And it was making the decision that, why wait until September? I can do it now. And I had been operating at that level for at least a few months. So I knew that I could continue. And by that point, I was making just as much money, if not more, than I had in my previous job. So I had a lot of money saved, and I knew that it wasn't like if one client was going to leave, then I would be in any type of financial trouble.
So you really built your practice. It's almost like you had your business building up on one side, and then on the other side you had your career kind of winding down as you took that from 5 days down to 2 days. And then you had the client base, and you knew that you had the prospects out there to really be kind of full and ready to go full time and to make the money that you needed to make.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I think the real question, the real thing that we need to find out from you is, how did you build that client base while you were still working? And the fact that you were working, you're a single mom, and you had at the time a 4 or 5 year old, it makes me tired. It makes me need to take a nap just thinking about it. So tell us, how did you balance all of that?
So I think the most important thing is just being really smart with your time. So I was really critical about where I was spending my time, and I would maximize every minute that I had. So while I was at work, sometimes at my lunch break, I would go and I would get groceries. So when it was colder weather, I would go and I would keep the groceries in the car. That was my lunch hour. Other times I'd sit in the car and I'd be working. So I really made the most of all my time. And at first it was exhausting, but I kind of adapted to that rhythm. Mm-hmm. And I also, I also had the benefit of hiring help. So I had a couple people. I hired a virtual assistant to start, and I had another person who could do some of what I could do, and I was able to outsource some of that. So that definitely helped with the load, and there was no way I could get through it without those two.
I see. So you started outsourcing really early.
And, well, I would say probably 8 or 9 months into my business, I did, but it was really because of the workload.
Okay.
Because I knew that I couldn't keep doing it all, and I thought that was one of the answers to try and leverage my time.
Cool.
And in terms of how I built my client base, a lot of it was really from referral. And I focused on giving my very best quality experience to my clients and being there. And I did some networking. I did some social media. I had a website, email list, all of that. But I would say really my clients came from referrals, and they had good experiences and they would tell others. And sometimes I'd need to prompt that and ask them for referrals, and other times they would come naturally. So one of my very first clients referred me to a couple other clients. I had a client who had found me on Facebook, and then she referred me to a couple other clients. So I knew that I could recreate that if I was even more intentional and if I had more time working on my business full time.
Excellent, excellent. We're halfway through the show, and I haven't even asked you what your business is. Tell us, I was so interested in the transition. Tell us a little about what you do in your business.
So I am an online marketing and launch strategist. I work with women entrepreneurs who are on a mission, and we come together and I complement them. They're really good at what they do. I'm really good at what I do. And so I bring in the business side, the practical steps, systems, sequences to their business to make their ideas a reality.
Excellent, excellent. Now, let's talk a little bit more about kind of the process that you went through for sort of finding those clients. So tell us kind of real specifically, give us some tips and stuff on what somebody can do to build that client base while they're still working.
Sure, yeah. My very first client actually came from a course that I had taken. So I watched a lot of the online, I guess you could say gurus, the women entrepreneurs who had successful businesses. And I had the impression that I needed to save up thousands of dollars to have my business. And what I did was I took a technical training course with someone who had an online business, and I learned a lot and I was exposed to the technical side of things. So I had the impression that I would need to spend thousands on a website. And through that course, I was able to set up my own website. I set up my own email list, and I learned a lot just of the basics of online business through that. And I was really engaged. So one of my rules back then, and it still is now, is really focus on getting the most of whatever I'm investing my money in. So I was really participating, and I wanted to get the most out of that course because I was investing the money and the time in it. And so the instructor noticed that I was really keen, and we had a couple conversations afterwards. She asked me what I wanted for my business, where I was at, and through those conversations, she decided to hire me. So I work with her as basically her project manager or business manager. And we worked together for over a year. And she referred me then to a couple clients who I still work with. And the other thing too was that people saw what was happening in her business. And so they'd ask her what's going on. And then she would say, oh, well, Emily's behind my business. And so that helped. So that was part of it. That was my very first client. My next client came from a networking event, and I went to a local networking event. She was sitting beside me. We talked a lot. I followed up after we had a conversation, and she decided to work with me. Another client came from a mom's group that I was in, and she was starting a business, and we talked a lot about business. And she said, okay, I'd love to hire you. And in a way, she was taking a leap because I really didn't have, I had a couple other clients. Mm-hmm. But she also then had a good experience and referred me to about 3 or 4 other people. And that was kind of the first burst of my business.
That's quite a burst, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like you just really rolled up your sleeves and provided really, really good value for people.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really the bottom line. And what I was trying to do was recreate that business manager job and bring all of that to work with my clients. And I feel like my clients were women around the same age as me. Some were moms. And so I felt like we really were building a relationship. And so I got to know them, their struggles, what they were looking for, what they really needed. And so I think in that I was able to provide a service that was really well matched to what they needed.
Very cool. Now, how closely related is what you do in your business to what you had previously done in your other jobs?
I see it as very related. So I really had education in being a business manager. I was quite young. I was in my low 20s, and the franchisee who I work with, I guess you could say, took a risk. I was younger, way younger than anyone else who was working at the company, and she promoted me very quickly. And so I got a lot of experience in the whole business side, so all of the aspects, human resources, budgeting, promotions, marketing, and I saw all of it. And through that, I feel like I translated all of those skills into helping other women manage their businesses. So a lot of achieving business priorities, setting business priorities, a lot of the foundational skills that you need to have an online business or a service-based business, a lot of those I learned there, and education that I had taken before. So really, it is almost like what I did before, but it's virtually.
Very cool. Now, when you're at a networking event and you're talking to someone about what you do, how did you kind of like know how to explain it? Like, because you had to explain what you did, and then you had to sell it, obviously. Mm-hmm. How did you figure out how to talk about it and talk about it in a way that was compelling to people and made them want to pull their wallets out and give you money?
Well, I had trouble with that, and I still have trouble with that. So when I go to a local networking event, in my area where I live anyways, I've only gone to a couple of them, to be totally honest, and both times I struggled. Events, well, what I found was, so I'll go to them, and they're primarily women, and so there'll be a lot of women who are selling, networking type, so something like Tupperware. Uh-huh. And so I don't necessarily relate.
So when you go to a networking event and you've got insurance agents, real estate agents, photographers, and MLM people. That's my experience.
And cool. Small business bankers who don't actually have a business, but they're there too. Yes. Yes.
Nothing against networking events. I just don't like them.
No.
I've gotten clients from networking events before. Fortunately, I don't have to anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I found was I would talk about how I have online business, and so they would ask questions. Well, where do you get your clients? You've never met your clients face to face. How does it work? And so there was a lot of just education and explanation, and I think then that my elevator speech or talking to them about my business wasn't as effective because there was just this curiosity factor or this I can't relate to you, blank stare, that's really interesting type response. And so I haven't found that effective. And I feel like in order to get myself together, drive there, go there, come back, in a way that's a lot of time, and I could be doing so much more to get clients from just sitting at home in front of my computer. And I know some people will say that you need to get out from behind your computer, but my experience has been that it works for me, and I only have a certain amount of time. I still have, my son, and I'm so grateful that I walk him to the bus and I pick him up and I volunteer sometime at a school and go on the class trip, and I'm able to do all that. But it means that my time is still very valuable. And so the amount of time that I would spend investing in a networking group, to me, it's not a good payoff. And so there's a lot of other activities that I'd rather focus on.
Excellent. Well, I want to clarify, I was complaining about networking events, and I do hate them. But I am a firm believer that it is important to get out and talk to people. So I want to be really clear about my thoughts on that. But I also know that you're bringing a different perspective, and I appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about how do you do that? How do you kind of do that networking and that building relationships and rapport from behind the computer? Tell us a little bit about what's worked for you.
So I would say that I take that networking and I apply it to online, and that could be through people that I have had interactions with. Definitely on social media in different Facebook groups. I am active and I meet people, and I might invite them to a conversation. They might invite me to a conversation. I also have an email list, which is really the basis of my business. And there'll be different times that I might have a call or a webinar. And afterwards, I'll invite people to have conversations with me that are not necessarily sales conversations. Mm-hmm. So I learn more about who it is who's on my list, who the women are that I'm attracting, what is really going on for them and how I could possibly help. And so I feel like one of the best things to do in your business is just focus on those relationships. And for me, it's been one relationship at a time. And so if I have a call that I know is going to be compelling to the people who are on my list, those women, I may or may not offer something at the end. Sometimes it's more valuable for me to get on the phone and have a 15-minute chat. And that could be someone who I do make an offer to about working together, or maybe I follow up with them in a month's time. But I'm really conscious about the relationships that I'm building and, showing up fully for those. And for me, that's really worked to grow my business.
Interesting. And you said you were talking about kind of being in Facebook groups and inviting people into a conversation, or other people inviting you into a conversation. And what you mean by that is that what you're saying? What you're saying is that you take the conversation out of the group and more into a one-on-one setting, right? So that might be via email or Skype or phone or whatever.
Right. Yep. So an example would be someone who I had interacted with before on Facebook. She posted in a group saying that she had a launch and it didn't go so well. And she was saying, that she felt kind of defeated about that. And I sent her a private message since we had interacted before. And I said, hey, would you love to jump on the phone? I'd love to jump on the phone. I'm curious about what happened and maybe I can share what's worked with me. And so yesterday we had a really great conversation. And I know that what I have to offer is a good fit. I know that she's on my list. I know that I have a call coming up. And so for me, I distinguish between a sales conversation and just a connection conversation. Yeah.
How do you keep folks from just sort of using you for free advice?
Yeah. So yeah, for me, there's the picking your brain, or I like to distinguish between I'll give one nugget or solve one part of it. But for me, in my mind, I have a boundary about this is what other people pay me for. And so I don't mind having a conversation and helping you with one thing, but it is not I don't do pick your brain type conversation.
So, do you use that actual language with prospects sometime and say, this is what people pay me for?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I've used that. I wouldn't say, you can't pick my brain or you're trying to pick my brain or anything like that.
Sure.
But yeah, I would say, and I have said, that's what people pay me for.
So you give value, you help people out for free as a relationship builder and as part of the sales process, but you draw a line. You have a line that you draw in the sand.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Excellent. Yep. Excellent. Emily, do you have any regrets?
No, not really. So I wouldn't say so. I think that if I had waited longer in my job, then I would have regrets. And I had it in my head that you need to have certain points met, and I didn't have all of those points that I thought I needed to have crossed off. And so I thought, I'll just wait till September. And it really was, I had hired a coach, and it was with her support. Just even that day that I was going to give in my resignation, I said, as soon as I give in my resignation, I'm emailing you. And she emailed me that day and said, have you done it yet? And it was that morning, and I didn't do it to the end of the day. So I think that if I had stayed there stuck, then I would have had regrets. But now I feel like I've created this life and this business that I really enjoy, and there's lots of things that I still want to do and want to try, but I'm on my way and I have that freedom. I'm making money. I'm able to be there for my son. So I feel like I've created really what I had set out to.
Amazing. Now, you said something that was really interesting. You said you thought there was this list of criteria that you needed to have before you could leave your job. Mm-hmm. And you said that when you actually left, you hadn't met all those criteria. What are some of the fictional criteria, some of the criteria that you thought was necessary but was not actually necessary?
I would say for me, one of the biggest factors was my own mindset around being a single mom. So I thought to be a single mom responsibility. So I felt really strong in terms of being responsible for myself and my son. I didn't have help. I didn't, I wouldn't have gone to my parents and said, oh, can I have money? I do have some financial support from my son's dad, but I want to be independent and be strong. And so for me, I thought to be a single mom, you have to work really hard and you have to be very responsible. So I felt like I needed to really think about it, have a concrete plan, know that it was going to work. And that to me would be responsible.
But you sort of redefined what it meant to be responsible, because I don't think anybody would say it for 1 second that you were not responsible. But you had to realize, I guess, that even though you had responsibility and even though it was important to be able to provide for yourself and your son, you kind of realized that you still had to take some risks.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I think a lot of it was the place where I was at. So my son was still really young, and his friends, his little friends, or people who in our neighborhood or my friends, they were all married. And so they had, either a spouse who was supporting them or they had gone back to work. And I didn't really know any other single moms. So my impression was a single mom has to work multiple jobs and is struggling and balancing everything. And I knew that wasn't necessarily true, but I really needed to let go and break through that before I could make the leap into my business.
What would you tell somebody that has some sort of a notion like that? Maybe it's about being a single mom, maybe it's about something totally different, but what would you tell somebody about that who has a notion like that that's holding them back that might not be true?
For me, what really helped was just looking at what is my reality. I can create my own reality. And so even though I may not see examples of that, or I have this impression that it needs to be a certain way, I can create what I want. And I know in myself, I had confidence that I was smart, I would make it work. And if I started having financial problems, I would just go back and I would get a job. And I left my job on really great terms. And I had references there, that I still have. And so I knew that. And so I had a backup. And I think as long as you can look at what is your own reality, even though you may not see that modeled for you, or maybe you see something totally different, or you have a notion like that, just looking at your reality and what you can do, because you're really in control of it through all of those little decisions that you make.
What great advice. Emily, what's the last piece of advice that you want to leave our listeners with?
I guess I would say really going back to relationships. For me, I feel the way that I was raised was really to look at who the person is and to practice kindness and respect. And in a way, I translate that into my business. And I like to say to my clients that each person, for example, on your email list, or each person who likes your Facebook page, they're actually a person who has their own story. And I like to remember that. And I also like to remember that with my clients. So I have, clients who are doing really well and others who maybe they're struggling or they are still in their job and they want to make the leap. There's lots of different scenarios. And I just look at that's their life and that's their story and they're an individual and what can I do to support them.
Amazing stuff. Emily, how do you define success?
To me, success right now is freedom. So for sure, I'm making money in my business. That's really great, but it really is the freedom. And so I want freedom in my life to decide what I'm going to do on a daily basis. I want freedom in my life to be creative, to express myself. I want freedom to decide for myself and my son what our life is going to look like. So for me, I feel like having that freedom and having my business grant that freedom is success.
Amazing stuff. Emily, where can we go to get more information about you and your company?
You can go to my website, which is emilychristofferson.com.
And we'll link that up below. And Emily, what type of person might be interested in getting help from you?
I would say any woman entrepreneur who is on a mission, who is looking for some support in their business or direction and some clarity, and they have a service-based business that they're really passionate about.
We've got some of those folks on this who are listening. Emily, thanks so much for joining us on the How to Quit Working show. Thanks for sharing your journey so candidly. I think that what you've done is amazing, and I have an utmost respect for all entrepreneurs, but certainly another level of respect for you as a single mom and what you've accomplished and done it so bravely and so successfully. And I wish you the best of luck in everything that you do going forward.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
There you have it, single moms. If you thought that was a reason why you can't start a business, I think Emily Christofferson has just shown you that it is no reason at all. The other thing Emily said was that she had a coach during her transition, and a coach can provide you with a lot of things. In Emily's case, she mentioned that it provided that very simple level of accountability that she needed on that day when she actually resigned from her job. You too can have that accountability as well as an experienced guide, someone who knows this, someone who's done it multiple times and actually been at entrepreneurship for 16 years, and that's Heather Osgood, the amazing How to Quit Working coach, and I highly recommend you reach out to her. Go over to howtoquitworking.com and get more information about coaching, and reach out to Heather and see if you guys can work together and take your business to the next level. Quit your job, do something amazing, be like all these amazing people I talk to in the How to Quit Working show. Speaking of talking to amazing people, we're going to do that again next time, and I look forward to talking to you again then.
Thanks for joining us on the How to Quit Working show. Tune in next time when we'll talk to another amazing person just like you who is now living the ultimate life of freedom and doing it on their terms. If you want to learn how to quit working and get these episodes delivered directly to you, visit howtoquitworkingshow.com.